If you're ever up for a creepy experience, then go to Blandford Cemetery in Petersburg, Virginia. I've been to a lot of cemeteries, but this one in particular is the scariest. I go there to visit dead family members and such. As my aunt named Patricia, she died at 6 months old, so I never met her, but every time I go, I feel as if I'm being watched. My family and I took pictures of her grave, and in every picture there are strange lights surrounding her grave. And our cameras have died whenever we tried to take over a certain amount of photos, regardless of the full battery. Another creepy experience I had is one day me and my sister visited. And it was the summer, so the temperature was way too hot, but the moment we got out of the car, the temperature dropped dramatically. I checked my phone to view the weather, and was surprised to see it saying 90 degrees Fahrenheit, but it felt like it was the 60s. Me and my sister shrugged it off, and as we were walking by the graves, we both heard piano music being played. We thought it was our grandma messing with her phone, but her phone was off and in the car. To make matters even creepier, the music kept drifting further away one minute, then it sounded like it was right in our ears, only to drift away again. We tried to find the sound, thinking it was someone else in the cemetery, but there was no one else there on this day, which wasn't surprising considering the location is really bad, full of drugs and abandoned neighborhoods. We kept looking, only to pinpoint the sound to a secluded grave close to the woods. But even then, it was still drifting. As we left the cemetery, my sister and I got a sick feeling like we were about to throw up. And when my sister looked out the window, she saw a dark figure run into the woods. I looked over and I saw nothing, but just thinking about this entire experience is too creepy. I've had a few other experiences, such as dreams of a grave that isn't there, etc., but I don't find them good enough to tell. Stay spooky. Thanks for reading. I debated about whether to share this account, but it does qualify something entirely unexplainable, scary, and possibly supernatural. When I was about 9 years old, in the mid-1990s, I was in my bedroom, staring into the dark, waiting for sleep to come. In front of my bed was a shelf, what a toy box was stacked on top of. It's been so many years, so I can hardly remember what toy it was. Either a toy oven or some type of arts and crafts thing. I do clearly remember the box as being colorful with an image of two children, a boy and a girl, playing on the side. For some reason, my eyes were drawn to this box, almost like I was expecting something. Very quickly, but clearly, the image of the little girl on the box moved. I remember her head tilting, and the expression on her face changing, and creepily, her looking directly at me. It was not an optical illusion or a shadow hitting the box. The image of the girl distinctly shifted. Don't ask me how, why, or what. You can imagine how this could scare the living heck out of a 9-year-old child. Just as rapidly as it happened, it ended. And I was so frightened. I froze and stuck my head underneath the covers. I was raised to believe in God. And I do, but sometimes unexplainable events happen around us. Some people may call it paranormal, supernatural, or just plain evil. I couldn't exactly say what I saw that night, but it did feel wrong. I never mentioned it to anyone because I wouldn't be believed by most, or at best, it would be dismissed as an optical illusion. But it truly did not seem like any sort of illusion to me. Occasionally, I'll remember it, and how totally bizarre the whole thing really was. Thanks for letting me share it. Back when I was a young, broke college student, a friend and I thought we'd stumbled upon the deal of a lifetime. A huge 5-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms for dirt cheap rent. The house was in a kind of out-of-the-way place in Virginia. But it suited our needs and the rent was unbelievably cheap. Let me preface this by saying that in the Commonwealth of Virginia, there are no disclosure laws in real estate, meaning that the buyer-renter is not entitled to know the history of the house before signing on the dotted line. Within a month of moving into this house, odd things began happening. The electricity didn't work very well. At first, we attributed this to the fact that the house was very old, built in the early 1900s, and the most recent rewiring of the house had been done in the 50s. Also, the main breaker for the house was located outside in a barn that stood about 20 yards from the house itself and was connected by several crude-looking overhead wires. Whenever the breakers tripped, which was at least 4 times a week, we'd have to get out the flashlight and go to the barn to flip them back on. The electricity wasn't the only problem. We had an answering machine that never recorded any messages. Sometimes the light would be blinking, and when we'd press play, it was nothing but static. This was before DVR, and we worked a lot of nights, so we would try to record our shows. But it never worked. Just static and white noise. We also found it odd that pictures never turned out, in or around the house. We went through 13 rolls of film before finally giving up. The first time we realized that we were dealing with more than just bad wiring was approximately 4 weeks after we moved in. As we were heading to the garage, which was only accessible through a door in the kitchen or the heavy old automatic door outside, we came to a dead stop. There was a man standing in our garage. He just stood there and was completely oblivious when we screamed. My friend slammed the door and locked it and called out to the man that we had a gun and we were going to call the cops. She retrieved the said gun, and when we opened the door again, the man was gone. Just poof, vanished. As previously stated, there were only 2 ways in: door through the kitchen or automatic door outside. The automatic door was very noisy, so we would have heard it open. And we had been in the kitchen all morning, so there was no way he got in that way. We were baffled, but went about life as normal. That incident seemed to open the floodgates, because after that, it really became obvious that we were dealing with something not of this world. We used to hear the sound of a baby crying, followed by the sounds of a rocking chair up in the attic. We investigated and found nothing. Certain spots would remain cold. Cold is not something you come across in Virginia in the summer. Numerous times we woke up to find all the contents of the pantry on the floor. There were dozens of other odd things that happened, but I'm just highlighting some of the more bizarre occurrences. As things began to escalate, we got more and more nervous. The pinnacle was when we were sitting in the kitchen one evening playing cards and waiting for some guests to arrive. Naturally, the lights went out. So we went out to trip the breaker. When we came out of the barn, we saw our friend running up the steps of the porch with a baseball bat. When we asked what he was doing, he told us he saw a man standing in our living room, then walk up the stairs. Scared, we crowded behind him and searched the house with the bat and a gun. Nothing. About 2 weeks after that, my roommate's boss asked her why she never returned his calls about switching a shift. She said she hadn't gotten any messages. And he proceeded to tell her about the man that answered the phone and told her we were out. Upon further investigation, we discovered that several other people had the same experience when they called. We were thoroughly freaked out by this time, so we decided to ask some of the town's residents about the house. We found out that the house was always vacant within 6 months of being rented out. Although we were scared, we still stayed because of how cheap it was. One evening, we were in the living room watching TV when we heard a huge thud against the basement door. When I say thud, I mean the whole wall shook and the door frame came loose. The door was locked, but we were scared and we put a chair against it. We could hear growling on the other side and claws on the door, so we again got the gun. We figured at first that a wild animal must have gotten in there, so we went outside to check the entrance. It was bolted shut. We even checked the tiny windows and nothing was broken. We finally went back into the house and opened the basement door. Nothing was there. I've never seen claw marks like that before or since. It was like whatever had done it only had 3 toes. Besides, nothing that was indigenous to the area was 3-toed, or could have gotten in there without opening the door or breaking a window. Not to mention, none of the local animals, say a bear, could have had that much force to wrap a door frame. We moved a week later. We could never really come up with any idea of what happened in that house or why. To this day, it remains a mystery. And to this day, nobody lives there for more than 6 months before leaving. I grew up in North Garden, Virginia, until I was 21. I lived on a farm off Plank Road. When I was younger, in middle school, I had one of the most awesome experiences ever. I was playing Nintendo 64 with my father in my room when my mother yelled in order to let us know I needed to answer the phone in the next room. I quickly walked into the computer room in order to pick up the phone and talk to my friend. We talked for a few minutes, and then suddenly I looked across the room and saw something that simply froze me still. Only about 3 to 5 feet across from me, I saw a woman. This woman was transparent, practically, and was wearing an old white-looking dress. She didn't look that old, and didn't say anything. I stood still and froze, and opened my mouth to say, "Oh my God," on the phone. I wasn't scared at all, just amazed. Within a few seconds, the ghost vanished. Looking at it now, I can still remember it as if it happened yesterday. I still have no idea as to why I saw that woman. Maybe she lived around there back in the day, I have no idea. I can recall my father telling me that historians had come up to our farm in order to attempt to find the location of where a house used to be. Despite their efforts, the location of the house has yet to be found. I can recall once I had an extremely vivid dream where I found an old house in the woods, but never tested out my theory. If anyone has any information, please feel free to comment back. I've been attempting to figure out who this lady may have been. My father told me a couple days ago that the prior owner's last name was Knight. Where to begin? I've shared one other story on here from my early childhood. I will attempt to share another which may be lengthy, so I apologize ahead of time. Out of consideration of all parties dead or alive and specific locations, names have been changed or called blank. Setting: somewhere in Southwest, in a military base exchange. And no, it's not Area 51. I'd began working in a hair salon on base part-time. A few days into my new job, I noticed the frame on my handheld mirror was broken. I thought nothing of it at first, as there were 3 of us hairdressers, and sometimes we would grab the nearest mirror on our way to wax a client, or a client in general would use one. So I assumed somebody had accidentally broken it. I was issued another one, but within a week the same thing happened. My boss questioned me in a joking manner as to how I kept breaking the frames. I joked back that at least it wasn't the mirror, and so no bad luck. But in all seriousness, I had not caused it. This prompted me to bring my own mirror because I had a suspicion that it wasn't caused by any of the girls. I don't know why, I just had the thought that there was something else happening. While alone during close that night, I spoke to the air, telling any presence responsible for the breaking of my mirror frame that I acknowledged them, and to please leave my mirror be. Thankfully, the frame stayed intact, and I have it to this day. And I later came to know how this act probably saved a lot of mirror loss grief. Fast forward a few months. When needing change for the salon, one of us had to go outside of the salon to what we called the cage in customer service. It was located past a food court in the main shopping area of the back of the store. Employees were instructed to round the side of the corner where there was a makeshift window with no glass but a metal grate with an opening at the bottom for passing money. But the metal was see-through. To the left there were offices, and all one had to do was lean back a bit to see into one of them and speak to whomever was seated at the desk. On this particular day, I went to the cage for change. The gal behind the counter was busy as an armed paper hanger, and I didn't have a client at the time. I relaxed and waited my turn, enjoying the downtime. For no particular reason, I found myself passing the time by looking across from me at the framed awards hanging on the wall. Out of nowhere, I literally watched one of the awards come from its place as if someone were standing there taking it down. It was suspended around a half second and then came from the wall about a foot in slow motion and dropped to the floor. I stood there in shock while my mind tried to process what I know for damn sure my eyes witnessed. At that moment, it was like I had panoramic vision and was hyper alert as I took the entire scene around this happening. Customers at the counter didn't seem to notice, and the girl working behind the counter didn't either, although she was bent down near to it, trying to receive a slip of paper she dropped. She even walked around and passed the award lying on the floor. Surely they could hear the crash. They seemed oblivious. I don't know what came over me, but I leaned back and looked into the office of the girl I will call Trish, whom I barely knew but spoke to in passing. She looked at me, and the look on my face must have prompted something in her to give me her undivided attention. She said hello, and I replicated, and was so shaken that I blurted out, Trish, I just watched an award come off the wall in slow mode, and it didn't look natural. She smiled and told me that was blank and blank who had died in a house fire long before the base was built. I stood in her doorway and unfolded the history on blank and blank, and many other spirits residing there. Trish hosted a retirement party for one of the girls who worked there. She and several other office employees hired a psychic medium for said party. The psychic told them that blank and blank were mother and daughter who were trapped in a prairie-type fire in the 50s. They waited for the husband and father to come save them, but he was at work. I told her about the mirrors, and she just smiled and said that they were letting you know that they were around. She also told me that the salon had been the old barracks back in the early 60s, and a soldier hung himself there. Also, in the loading dock area was such a menacing presence the cart boy refused to put carts away or retrieve them. Trish told me another story about an office manager's encounter. When closing at night, the main lights had to be shut off in the back of the store. The manager shut down everything and made her way to the front of the store via emergency lighting that stayed on to lock up and exit. As she got to the exit, all the lights came back on. This spooked her, I was told, but she found the courage to go back to the store and shut them down again. From that day forward, I acknowledge all spirits, asking them to please leave mirrors, lights, and even doors alone because my boss, who was very religious, would not understand or believe, and I needed to keep my job. They respected me for it, which I'm thankful. Thanks for reading. I have other experiences I will share later, but this took place in the Southwest USA. A very enchanting place indeed. Blessed be. Ghouls, I'm back. I'm alive. Everyone in my home is alive. My son had the flu. I had the stomach flu, which ended up being like a flu as well because I had a fever that is still not 100% gone. But I'm sure you could hear I'm still sick, but I really wanted to record and make a video. And although I'm a little congested and nasty sounding, I had to get something out because I was going crazy. So yeah, I apologize if it's annoying because it annoyed me a little bit when I was editing it. You could only hear it every little bit. Like, it's not 100% all the time I sound disgusting, but you can hear it at, bits and pieces of the video, and it really annoyed me, but I know I needed to get a video out. But thank you for all the well wishes from everybody checking up on me and, messaging me and DMing me and commenting and all that stuff, and, hoping that we got better. We're getting there. Everyone but me is better. I don't know why. But yes, as always, my last video is on top left, the next video is on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen as well as in the description box below. Secret word of the day will be orange, because this is what I've been drinking a lot of, orange. But remember, there's always someone or something watching you.